President Trump says he is ending trade talks with Canada, citing an anti-tariff ad campaign by the province of Ontario. Now, this includes excerpts from a 1987 radio address given by late President Ronald Reagan, in which he says tariffs hurt Americans. Listen.
High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs.
CBS News correspondent Natalie Brand joins us from the White House with more on this. Good morning, Natalie. Explain the president's reasoning here, because Canada is the country's second largest trading partner. And was this all now a decision based on that ad?
And there have been these ongoing tensions between the two. But look, just a few weeks ago, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney was here at the White House talking about their valuable relationship. There is, signs of progress during that day. But now we have this ad by the province of Ontario and the president's new social media post, which essentially retweeted or reposted a statement by the Reagan Presidential Foundation saying that there was selective audio and video used from his address, and it misrepresents the address. Essentially, clips were spliced together. Now, the president calling the ad fake, saying it's an attempt to interfere with pending litigation on tariffs before the U.S. Supreme Court. Keep in mind, oral arguments on that case set for early next month. Now, we're waiting for a response, a direct response from Carney regarding this latest post. But, a lot of products, most products from Canada have been exempt from tariffs under the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement that had been negotiated during the first Trump administration. That agreement is up for review next year. So the key question is here, how long do these tensions, these new tensions last, and will it impact that larger deal that was so instrumental to trade between these two top trade partners?
And another big topic, Natalie, is that demolition of the East Wing. It kind of struck me yesterday that this is where most people will get a tour of the White House. I got a tour of the place last year and was really stunned, despite having worked there like you in the Brady briefing room. There's a lawsuit now against what the president is doing. What's happening on that front?
Yeah, an individual couple filed this lawsuit seeking to halt the demolition. But, Errol, the demolition is pretty much complete now after the construction or the raising of that building that was completed this week. Now, the lawsuit says that this demolition did not have the required approvals or reviews under the National Historic Preservation Act. But what's really interesting is under that law, there's actually an exemption for some notable buildings here in D.C., including the White House. CBS News' Weijia Jiang pressed Caroline Levitt on that topic yesterday during the press briefing. Take a listen to part of the exchange.
Can the president tear down anything he wants without oversight? Could he demolish this building or, say, the Jefferson Memorial?
When it comes to phase one of this project, the tearing down of the current East Wing structure, a submission is not required legally for that. Only for vertical construction will a submission be required.
Now, the White House is saying that plans for the ballroom itself will be formally submitted before construction, but experts telling CBS News usually the demolition and the construction kind of goes hand in hand, Errol.
All right, Natalie Brand at the White House with those major news items. Natalie, thank you. CBS News congressional correspondent Nicole Killian is switching scenery for us this morning and is joining us from the White House. Good morning, Nicole. Fact check the context of the Reagan address used in that ad. Is it all it's made out to be, and is President Trump justified in responding in this way?
Well, basically, this was a speech, rather, in 1987 that President Ronald Reagan delivered. At the time, he was set to impose some limited tariffs on Japan, but he uses this address to explain that, but also overall why he thinks these types of tariff policies ultimately are not good policy, that ultimately they are trade barriers that could hurt American jobs. So it was more so to kind of explain his rationale that we're putting these limited tariffs on Japan, but this is not necessarily going to be a long-term policy. And ultimately, those tariffs were lifted. President Trump, however, noted that Canada used excerpts of Ronald Reagan's address in this, and he says it was in a fraudulent way. In fact, we just heard from Secretary of State Marco Rubio not too long ago as well, who also reiterated that he believes Ronald Reagan's words were taken out of context. The Ronald Reagan Foundation, for its part, now says that it will review its legal options.
Wow. How is the White House responding?
Well, the president a short time ago just posted again on Truth Social accusing Canada of cheating, in his words, and again pointing out that he believes that this ad was fraudulent, and he believes that this is an attempt to potentially influence the Supreme Court, which is currently considering whether the president has the authority to raise tariffs. But what is interesting, Errol, is that the president and Canada's Prime Minister Carney are set to attend a summit in Asia this weekend, so this could potentially flare up there.
All right, we will watch that closely. Nicole, thanks so much. Enjoy your weekend.
But over the long run, such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer.
CBS News correspondent Natalie Brand joins us from the White House with more on this major development. Natalie, good morning. Great to see you again. Explain President Trump's reasoning here. I mean, this was an ad campaign for one province. Canada, the nation, is the second largest trading partner of the U.S. So what does this all mean?
Yeah, in a new social media post this morning, President Trump says, quote, Canada cheated and got caught, referencing this ad, which essentially spliced together clips from President Reagan's 1987 address, which he was justifying some targeted tariffs being used that year on Japan, but the speech was largely about free trade. But the Reagan Presidential Foundation actually put out a statement yesterday saying that the clips were essentially misrepresenting the speech. The president reposted that in his announcement that he was terminating trade negotiations. He also alleged that the ad was done to interfere with the U.S. Supreme Court case on tariffs, oral arguments scheduled for early next month. Now, we do have a brand new response from Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, who spoke to reporters before departing for Asia. Take a listen.
And we stand ready to pick up on that progress and build on that progress when the Americans are ready to have those discussions, because it will be for the benefit of workers in the United States, workers in Canada, and families in both of our countries. Now, what we can control...
So, essentially saying that he wants to restart talks when President Trump is ready. Also note that President Trump also leaving for Asia later today for these key economic summits set to take place next week. Now, the White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett, speaking to Fox Business this morning, was asked about the president's announcement and said he thinks that the president has been frustrated for some time about lack of progress with Canadian trade negotiations, and that maybe it's good to take a break.
Interesting. We'll keep watching that. Natalie, I want to ask you about a new lawsuit which is challenging the administration's East Wing demolition, which is already complete. So you wonder what the point is, but help us understand what's happening there.
Yeah, this was a lawsuit filed by an individual couple trying to halt the demolition. But as you noted, that demolition is pretty much finished after we saw those excavators out there all this week. But the suit alleges that the administration violated the Historic Preservation Act. But what's important to note, Errol, is that there's actually an exemption for some key buildings here in Washington, D.C., including the White House. So the White House arguing that they had the legal authority to do this, but that they will also submit formal construction plans for the actual construction of the ballroom. We also learned from a White House official that some of the historic artifacts that were in the East Wing have now been taken to be preserved, Errol.
Still remarkable to see. Natalie Brand with all the latest from the White House. Thank you so much.